Now for a discussion of the digestion of fat, and then the absorption of fat, because that's fun, the transportation, and we'll talk about excretion. There's no chemical digestion of fat in the mouth, just the mechanical digestion. In this case, I'm calling it melting, but that really probably would only happen if you had a stick of butter in your mouth. But the fat in the food mixes with everything else and forms a bolus, which crosses over the epiglottis, goes down the esophagus, crosses over the cardiac sphincter, and enters the stomach. In the stomach, we only have mechanical digestion. There is no chemical digestion of fat in the stomach. And we have the formation of, along with the other stomach contents, a semi-liquid mass of partially digested food called chyme. Chyme then crosses over the pyloric sphincter and enters the small intestine. On the way to the small intestine, the hormone CCK targets the gallbladder, which then releases bile and begins to mechanically emulsify fat so that enzymes found in the small intestine, the pancreatic and intestinal lipases, will be able to chemically digest the fat. This is the molecule bile. No, you don't have to know it, but what I want you to just be aware of is that there is a water-fearing portion of the molecule on the left and a water-friendly portion of the molecule on the right. That's why bile can act as an emulsifier, because it is able to, well, let's see what it's able to do. In the stomach, the fat and watery gastrointestinal juices tend to separate, and the enzymes in the juices cannot get at the fat. When fat enters the small intestine, bile is secreted after the gallbladder gets that message from CCK, and it can bring the fat into the water. It does this by emulsification. It breaks the large globules of fat into smaller droplets. After these droplets are emulsified, more surface area of the droplets and of the fat are exposed, and the enzymes are then able to start to chemically digest fat. This is an overview of the absorption of fat. It's kind of amazing and probably very confusing, so what I'd like to do is break down each part of it, starting with something I got from Google University. Fats are digested in 2 stages. We just finished looking at the first stage, the emulsification of fat by bile. The next stage is the chemical digestion of fat with lipases, where the triglyceride, that 3-carbon glycerol backbone and 3 fatty acids, is chemically broken down by the lipase. So let's look. The triglyceride is digested into short-chain fatty acids, medium-chain fatty acids, long-chain fatty acids, and these fatty acids can differ in length, a 3-carbon glycerol molecule, and monoglycerides, which would be that 3-carbon backbone with 1 fatty acid. Those are the breakdown products of triglyceride digestion. That's after the lipases have broken down the triglyceride. The short chain and medium chain fatty acid and glycerol molecule, because they are so small, they are hydrophilic. They are able to move through the intestinal cell, yes, I drew that, and directly into the bloodstream. But our long-chain fatty acids and monoglycerides are more complicated because they are hydrophobic. They are combined into what's called a micelle. That micelle moves into the intestinal cell. Protein, cholesterol, and triglyceride, which is what that's supposed to say, then combine with the contents of the micelle to form a lipoprotein called the chylomicron. This chylomicron then moves out of the intestinal cell into the lymphatic system. So let's look at the whole picture. We have the short chain and medium chain fatty acids and glycerol molecule moving directly into the intestinal cell, through it, and into the bloodstream because they're hydrophilic. The long-chain fatty acids and monoglycerides form a micelle that moves into the intestinal cell, combines with protein, cholesterol, and triglyceride to form a lipoprotein called the chylomicron, and this enters the lymphatic system. The bloodstream and lymphatic system are part of what's called the circulatory system. We have 4 different types of lipoproteins, and if you recall, proteins have many functions, and one of them is transportation. The 4 different types of lipoproteins are the chylomicron, the VLDL, the LDL, and the HDL. You don't need to know what those letters stand for. But what I would like you to notice is that each of these lipoproteins not only contains protein, but the 3 members of the lipid family, the cholesterol, phospholipid, and triglyceride. The triglyceride-rich lipoproteins on the left are the ones that are first found directly after a meal. These are the ones that directly resemble what you just ate. As they travel throughout the body, from the lymphatic system, ultimately into the bloodstream and to the cells where the contents will be used, they change in the amounts pretty much of cholesterol and protein. Now, I tell people to remember LDL is the lousy cholesterol and HDL is the healthy cholesterol. And it has to do with the amount of cholesterol found in these lipoproteins. We'll talk more about these when we get to heart disease. But which one do you think is associated with a reduced risk of heart disease? And looking at the makeup of that lipoprotein, why do you think that is? Of course, we have Sydney, who will give us an overview of fat digestion if you want to take some time to look. After lipids have been digested and absorbed, they're transported in the circulatory system. Water-soluble nutrients like the water-soluble vitamins, amino acids, glucose molecules, and those short and medium-chain fatty acids and glycerol are transported directly in the blood vessels. The fat-soluble nutrients are chylomicrons, and fat-soluble vitamins are first transported in the lymphatic system or lymphatic vessels. They ultimately get to the bloodstream, and from there they're moved to the cell. Once these cells have used or metabolized the nutrients, what is left over? The kidney gets rid of water and water-soluble waste. We sweat out water and water-soluble waste as well. We exhale CO2 and water, and the colon or large intestine will resorb water if the body still needs it, and then compact undigested food and these other components into waste, which will be held in the rectum and ultimately get excreted. And I think that's as good a place as any to end. See you later.